Hi, I'm Charlie Collins, and this is the Donegal Sport Hub Donegal Daily Championship podcast.
And you're very welcome to our podcast. The Michael Murphy Sports and Leisure Championships are well on. Of course, we've reached what people would consider to be the business end of it, and I'm delighted to say that I'm joined again by John Haran and Danny O'Donnell, two men of great wisdom who are going to share their wisdom with us over the next few weeks as to what might happen. John and Danny, you're both welcome.
Thanks, Charlie. Great to be back.
John, somebody said to me, need to look at the formula. This thing's not working. There's too many games that are not worth this or worth that. But when we look at what happened maybe on the last weekend, it's hard to argue that that's a fact in both the intermediate and in the senior championship.
Some great games, Charlie, and a lot of games going down to the wire, and a lot of teams with a lot to play for on the last day, which you can't ask for any more than, everything on the line in the last day, be it stay out of relegation, get into the top 12, or maybe try and get into the top 4 in the senior championship and miss out, have a week's rest. So plenty to play for, Charlie. And then, in the bigger picture, the way the inter-county season's gone now with clubs, we don't have our county players for long, Charlie. You don't really have them in the league at all. Yeah. It's not like 10 or 12 or even 20 years ago. So, for clubs to develop a team and try and get a bit of rhythm going and, bring young players through along with the senior players in your club, you need more than 1 or 2 games a year. So at least everyone got 4 games. A lot of teams are going to get 5. Well, every team's going to get 5 games now because either you're in the promotion or you're in the relegation. So that's 5 meaningful games, Charlie. And I know it sounds awful to say that, 5 meaningful games in a whole season of Gaelic football, but in the reality, Charlie, that's the way it's looking at it for a lot of teams, because league football has become very, very irrelevant for a lot of clubs, which is very unfortunate, and it's a worrying aspect. So I wouldn't argue with the championship too much, Charlie. People are on about going back to the home and away. It could be only 2 games if you win your home game and win your away game. Some club is out after 2 games. I know in Tyrone this weekend it was straight knockout again, but I think it's very harsh, Charlie, just straight knockout. So
you'd stay with it.
It's hard to get it right, Charlie, but I think you need a few games, meaningful games. And I know the championship, there mightn't be everything on the line in the earlier rounds. It's still a championship game. Your county players are there, and you have to win. So I'd be happy enough with it, Charlie.
Yeah, Danny.
No, look, Charlie, I thought this question might come up because there's a lot of talk nationally and within the county about formats and everything else. I can't understand the conversation that's going to reduce the number of games that we see our highest profile players playing in. Our league programme has been reduced in the last couple of seasons. I think it's 12 games in Division 1, 13 games in Division 2. County players don't play league football. So if we reduce the championship to a knockout, maybe 1 or 2 games, maybe 3 games, 4 or 5 games for the better clubs, you're not going to see those high profile players, right? The system we have in the GAA works at every other level in sport. The NFL, European Championship, Champions League, Champions Cup and rugby, group stages, you find your feet. I agree with John. County players come back in the system. I heard Ronan McNeil has chatted about it the last day. Delighted to have Darrell Beale in through the group for the last 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah. You bed in tactics, you bed in a bit of a culture within the group. You can find your feet in the group, and then it's knockout. It's knockout from this weekend on. So for the next 6 weeks, we get that knockout phase of championship.
So the balance is pretty good then, Danny?
Well, I think so. And I think if you ask players, Charlie, and I think when people chat about this, they forget about what the players want. Players want to play football. They don't, and they want to play meaningful games.
Yeah.
And your most meaningful game is your championship. So what is wrong with playing 4 group games, find out your level, find out where you're at, and then hit this weekend and the following weekends when it's all just, everything's on the line, and your county players are playing, your club players are playing, but them standards improve, and we're in the business end now.
Okay. As you said, Charlie, like every game in the senior championship last weekend, there was something on the line. Like, it was either to get into the top 4
and in the intermediate at the weekend as well.
Exactly,
John,
so like, you can't ask for better than that. Going into the 4th round of games, that every team had something to play for and something meaningful to play for. So, good enough system, Charlie. It's impossible to get it right, but as I would agree with Danny, we can't start reducing meaningful games. That would be a backward step, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's a bad start to this. You two boys agreeing on everything. Hopefully that's not setting the scene for the next number of weeks. I want to thank Donnell Construction in Boston, USA, of course, Paul Freed, for his support again on the podcast. Much appreciated, Paul, and I know that you're a keen watcher of this podcast. Right, let's get really into it now, John. The championship, the semi-finalists, the guys who have clinched, quarter-finals already, Glen Swilly, St Michael's, Niamh Conlon, Kilcar. Fair play to Glen Swilly and St Michael's. Not a lot of people would have seen them getting in that automatic spot.
Definitely not, Charlie. I think especially St Michael's, Glen Swilly did well enough last year and they have a good young team coming through, but St Michael's would have struggled, Charlie, and you know, to see them getting 4 wins, 8 points was tremendous. And even, you know, you could argue that maybe the first 3 games at their level, you might possibly think that they could win, you know, especially the 2 home games. But to go away to Gweedore in that last game, Charlie, and won, a big statement. And I didn't think they would beat Gweedore in Gweedore.
Well, there was a lot of stake for Gweedore as well.
There was, absolutely. So it was all on the line, Charlie. And for St Michael's to go there and stand up and get that performance and win by a point in Marigal, Charlie, you don't go to Marigal and win championship games very easy. You could count on one hand the amount of teams that have done it this last number of years. And I know St Junans haven't done it in a number of years. We drew 1 year, but we didn't beat them. So a big result for St Michael's, and fair play to them, Charlie, because I wouldn't have seen it coming at the start of the year. Glen Swilly, you know, you could argue, Charlie, Danny has a lovely sheet here. You know, the Bet St Noel's probably expected to do that there. Bet Cloughaneedy struggled to beat Cloughaneedy at home, and Cloughaneedy have struggled. You know, 4 Masters away. I suppose Michael Murphy came into it in the second half and turned it around, and a good result from McCool. So, you know, maybe Glen Swilly slightly more difficult.
2 of those teams in the relegation situation.
Yeah, I suppose you could look at that. St Noel's, Charlie, have disappointed, you know, but I know we're not chatting about them here now. So, no, fair play to Glen Swilly. I've seen them against McCool's, and they're going nicely, Charlie. So, yeah.
A lot of people will be glad to see the big 4 thing that's been going on for a number of years. Of course, St Eunice and Gweedore and Kilcar and Niamh Connell expected to get those automatic spots. So the mix is different now, which is no harm, Danny.
Yeah, and I think we said in here the last couple of years that it was up to the clubs like Glen Swilly, McCool's, etc., to start bridging the gap. Although I do believe that probably 2 of the top 4 have slipped back a wee bit in Kilcar and Gweedore, but they're still big clubs with big reputations, are still maybe in the top 4. But Glen Swilly and St Michael's are certainly knocking on the door. McCool's are knocking on the door. Going into the championship, I would have put St Michael's in the top 8. I did think they would qualify for the quarterfinals based on Michael Langan being there. But they have a very good setup this year. They're very defensively set up. It'll be very hard to break down. And if you look at the makeup of their team, their experienced players are still there. Andrew Kelly, Martin McElhinney, Anthony McFadden's in through them. Daniel McLaughlin is coming in off the bench at times. So they have a lot of experience, and they have young players in through them as well, like Carlos O'Reilly and Eddie O'Reilly and Oshie Lang and these boys. So Michael Cannon. They've a good enough mix, and they're always hard to beat down the bridge. But I agree with John. Their big statement was the Gweedore statement. Going down to Margagathlin and taking Gweedore out. Gweedore haven't beaten St Eunan's in the previous round. As to Glen Swilly, look, they are the team that's coming. You know, you've got, everybody talks about Michael Murphy year on year, but Michael Murphy has basically been wrapped in cotton wool will be for the next couple of years. He'll play very little league football. He might come in towards the end of the league or in big games, but he's going to be ready for championship. So he's leading the charge. Copper's there, Savvy, Keelan Kelly, but it's the young boys that have come in that re-energise them. You know, we talked before about Jack Gallagher and Donnell Gallagher, good players. The young lad come into the setup now, Owen Scott. I've seen him up at the academy, a good quality player. But there's real stuff about him. And had they Kevin Marley at home and Mark McAteer at home, who left them at the tail end of last season, I think it was, they would be stronger again. But Glen Swilly are in a good place, in a very good place going to the quarter-final. St Michael's, we obviously know with the Michael Lange situation, that's a big blow to them
loss
going into the quarter-finals. But they have a 2-week break. It'll be interesting to see who those 2 teams get in the quarter-finals. I think Glen Swilly will have real ambitions to go all the way to a final, but I do think they might have to avoid a Glenties or the Connell and a St John. I don't think they get 2 of them out on the journey to a final. They might take 1 out, but they'll certainly be looking to get past the quarter-final stage at least, because they haven't done that in the past 2 seasons. I think they've lost the 2 quarter-finals, but definitely worth their place in the quarterfinals, the 2 of them.
Sorry, Charlie. The only thing I'll say about the big 4, you know, not the last number of years, no one has knocked the big 4 out of the championship, bar the big 4 have beaten each other. You know, so the first game of the year in championship, 4 Masters had that great result against Gweedore, which in fairness was, you know, Gweedore are a big 4 team, and they beat them. St Michael's have beaten Gweedore. The only team to beat St Eunan's was Gweedore. Only team to beat Niamh Connell was St Eunan's. Only team to beat Kilcar was St Eunan's. So you're still waiting for that knockout game, Charlie.
Still there.
That knockout game now to come. You know, whether can a Glen Swilly, and you would say on current form they could go and beat a Gweedore or a St Eunan's or anyone or a Kilcar. But until that happens, Charlie, I'd just be cautious to see can a lower grade team knock one of the big 4 out in a knockout game.
The only thing on Glen Swilly, they haven't played any of those teams yet.
No.
But I don't think they'll fear those teams.
No.
I think I've been reading quotes during the week. They know they're a championship team, and they know they're going to be underdogs against any of the top 4. until they beat one of them. But they'll be a dangerous team in the quarter-final.
It's going to happen. All right. Let's look forward then to the weekend, John. We've got 4 quarter-finals, preliminary quarter-finals now. I'm staying with the Senior Championship. Donnell versus Downings, Ardra versus St Eunan's, Four Masters versus Killybegs, Gweedore versus McCool's, which is the one that most people are saying is the big one. So we'll start with that. Gweedore, McCool's. Gweedore, after beating St Eunan's in O'Donnell Park, will be hugely disappointed with what happened in Maharagal on Sunday. McCool's will be disappointed that they didn't take out Glenswilly, because at the start of this campaign we were talking about them as possible, contenders sort of thing. So that's a big game. One of those clubs are going to be out of the championship this weekend.
And they're going to be out earlier than they thought, Charlie, and it's going to be a disappointing season for whoever it is. Big time. That's the bottom line. Like, if Gweedore go out, it's a disaster, not even get to a quarter final. And I think really the same you have to say for McCool's, if they don't get to a quarter final, it's going to be a disaster, because they both were coming. Gweedore got to the final last year, all right, disappointing on the final day. Got to a league final, disappointing against Niamh Conaill in the league final, but took St Eunan's out. It's very hard to know, Charlie, because they obviously went up to Four Masters and got beat 2, which was a big shock
on the opening day.
On the opening day, won their second game, came to O'Donnell Park and put in a good performance against St Eunan's. Now St Eunan's were poor, Charlie. I have to say, they were poor. St Eunan's were coming off the high of beating Niamh Conaill the week before. Maybe they thought it was only a matter of togging out and made a lot of changes and didn't get going. But that's not to take away from Gweedore. They still went, got the job done, took their scores and
set themselves up nicely
and defended well.
Yeah.
And maybe they fell into the trap of thinking that they had the hard work done by beating St Eunan's in O'Donnell Park. We'll have no bother with St Michael's at home and got caught. So the pressure's on, Charlie, for both teams. Like McCool's, you can chat about the Bradley Walsh episode. He's a big loss for them. There's no doubt about it. He's a big player. He's a big miss. And it was a costly mistake, and it's cost his team, and they're under pressure now, Charlie. So whoever goes out, Charlie, are going to be seriously disappointed. There's going to be a real disaster for them. There's no other way of looking at it. Like getting knocked out before the quarter final for any of them two teams who would have ambitions of maybe getting to a semi-final. Gweedore probably trying to get back to a final, building on last year. So it's going to be tough, Charlie.
Yeah. This is the sort of match we look forward to, Danny, isn't it?
Well, this is the tie of the round.
This is it.
I mean, this is it's on at 4 o'clock on Sunday. It's the big game of the weekend. I agree with John. I think the pressure is on both teams. I don't think any of them wanted to be knocked out before the quarter final. But this situation is Gweedore's making. Had Gweedore done their business against St Michael's at the weekend, this fixture doesn't happen. Yeah. They finish further up the league. I don't know who they would got to that stage. So they're going to have to find a way now. O'Donnell Park is a good venue for them. They played well against St Eunan's there a couple of weeks ago.
They did.
They played McCool's there in the semi-final last year. And that's the day that Oisín Gallen put on a performance of the ages, one of the best performances I've ever seen by a club player. Scored 10 out of 11, I think. But Bradley Walsh was there. Yeah. He was playing out the field, putting the ball in, picking up marks, different things. He's not in the equation this year or in this game. Gweedore, I think, will fancy it. I think is probably the game. I think Gweedore will be vulnerable going into this round against another team not of the stature of McCool's. I think they'll be hurting after losing against St Michael's, and I think they'll come out to make a statement against McCool's. Won't be easy made, but you would think they beat them well enough last year in the park. I thought in the end up, I think they got 3 goals. They cut through them through the middle. Now, having said that, McCool's have seen the return of Luke Gavigan. Fireman's back in the middle of the field. Gilhooly didn't play much for them last year, so they're 3 tough defensive-minded players. So I would imagine McCool's are more defensively set up this year and will stop maybe Gweedore getting through the middle. They'll certainly put a man on Darragh O'Beal to stop his influence. Then a lot will come back to the likes of Ethan Harkin. Can he step up to the plate? Eamon Collins returned from Dubai. He's back in the team. They'll need those lads firing, because at the end of the day, the one player that could separate both teams is Oisín Gallen. If Oisín Gallen's on fire this weekend, I don't think Gweedore will stop him. They couldn't stop him last year with double markers. I mean, the 2-man, Neil McGee was on him along with maybe Gary McFadden, I think. So if Oisín Gallen's on form, now he has missed a game or 2 games through injury. Is he fully fit? If he's fully fit and Jimmy Keegan's pulling the strings at 11 and they get enough ball around the middle of the field with Fireman and Luke Gavigan and these boys and get the supply into Oisín Gallen and he's on fire, McCool's could win this game. But anything other than that, I think Gweedore will have enough to take them.
Well, Oisín Gallen looks sharp enough now in Glenswilly.
He's the match winner.
He looked sharp enough. Maybe at times Charlie took a wee bit too much out of it, maybe trying to do too much himself. You can't blame him for that. He's a quality player. He's going to be an all-star this year. And I suppose he thinks maybe there's a lot of, he has to carry the cab, but sometimes maybe he can lay it off, maybe attract 2 or 3 men and slip it off to someone in a better position. but he looked sharp enough to me in that game. Will bring him on. So as Danny said, it's going to be a big ask for Gidor.
And Gidor have Danny Curran back this
Yes,
year, and
yes.
look, I hope Kieran Gillespie's back. I saw him going off injured against St Eunice that day, and
yeah.
you could hear an audible groan from the stand when he went down. And he didn't feature at the weekend against St Michael's. So hopefully he's not a serious injury. That's another big player for Gidor. So I think Gidor might have defensively, if they go with the tactics they did against St Eunice, which I'm sure they will, because they'll fear Oshingallen. If they play with 13-14 behind the ball, reduce all that space to Oshingallen and look to play in the counter-attack with Darragh O'Beal in particular and Ethan Harkin up top and Eamon Collum, they might just do enough.
Okay, it'll be a cracker. I saw Donnell against St Michael's down at the bridge. 9-8 it finished in St Michael's. Langan kicked a great free to win that game. The weather conditions really dominated that game, but I was impressed with the tenacity of Donnell that day, because things didn't go right for them straight after half time. Danny, they were 8-1 down. It took them a while to get into it, but once they did, they got back to 8-all and probably should have won the game. They'll be favourites against Downings.
I would think they would be. Yeah, I think they will. And it's funny, this game reminds me of the game we previewed this time last year, Cloughaneely versus Ardra in the preliminary quarter-final. And I remember saying this was Cloughaneely's opportunity to get to a quarter-final and make a wee statement as a club. Yeah. And Ardra beat them decisively in the park, absolutely hammered them, to be honest.
That's right.
Donnell in the same boat for me this weekend. This is their chance to make a statement to get to a quarter-final. And Downings are going to be awkward opponents. They're going to set up defensively under Maxey. They've got good forwards at the top end of the pitch. So Donnell will have to manage all of that and still be solid themselves. But look, I would know the Donnell team quite well. We played them in the league, obviously. Yeah. And they're driven by the three Curran brothers, Mark Curran, Barry Curran, Darren Curran, good players. They've got good forwards up top. They've got Carol McGee. Danny Rogers, a good goalkeeper. I think based on the 2-15s, I would fancy Donnell. But Maxey will take the 2-15s out of it. You know what I mean? He'll just make it 15, leave 15 in a different way.
Yeah.
And then it'll come down to who has maybe the better forwards to get that wee bit of space to kick that point or create that goal chance. But what an opportunity for Downings as well. I mean, Downings, they celebrated a 6-point defeat against St Eunice there the weekend because they knew that might get them in. And I think it got them in by 1 point or 2 points, yeah. And it's the difference between having a free shot this weekend at a quarter-final versus a relegation playoff. So they'll come in with no pressure on them. The Donnell will probably have more pressure on them simply because these are the last two intermediate winners, aren't they?
That's right.
Donnell 2 years ago, Downings last year. So one of them will make a quarter-final. So big opportunity. It's in Falcara. Should be a big crowd at that game. And I'll go for Donnell based on, I think the Curran brothers are big players, and I think they'll drive them over the line with the likes of Carol McGee, the likes of Dara Gallagher, Dylan Sweeney, Oisin Boner, big Conor Green. They've good forwards. Now, Downings have as well, but do they have enough? They have.
John, what do you think?
Sure.
Yeah, I think, Jerry, the way it panned out, I think Maxey would be delighted that he finished 12th and Donnell finished 5th, because if you look at it, you had St Eunice, 6th, Four Masters, 7th, Gidor, McCool's, you know. And
you think he'll have a chance against Donnell?
I think he'd have a better chance against Donnell than maybe some of the other teams in there. So definitely, I said Jerry was down on Saturday night at the St Eunice game. You know, they did put everyone behind the ball. They were celebrating every score because they knew they had to keep the score down and stay in the game. And they battled hard, Jerry. They made it very difficult for St Eunice, well organised. Probably running out of players at this stage, Jerry. The goalkeeper, McClafferty, went off in the first half, and you know, I think Ronan Gallagher was taking the kickouts for them, a real throwback to the 1960s where the centre half back was coming back in to take the kickouts. But you know, they battled hard, Charlie. They were full of guts, and Maxey and Barney were roaring them on from the sideline, and every ball was fought for, and they battled hard against St Eunice and made it very difficult. So you couldn't fault Downings for effort, you know. And if they bring that effort to Falcara on Saturday or Sunday, you know, they'll have a chance because they won't fear. Maxey won't fear Donnell. No. It's, as you say, Danny, it's whether they can come out now and play a bit of football and try and get
pressure's
a win and pressure's off and try and get enough scores.
Stay in
the senior championship.
Just a word of caution for Donnell: the 3 wins were against the teams that are in the relegation.
Yes.
St Knowles, Glenfin, and Eirua. And then one test St Michael's came up by a point shot.
So there's a lot of that, Charlie. You know, looking at the fixtures, you don't want to be too hard on teams. I'm saying, like as Danny says, the 3 wins they got were against the 3 teams in the relegation, but there's a bit of that going on where, you know, some teams have found themselves higher up the table because of the opposition they've beat.
Well, if you compare Cloughaneely's draw, Cloughaneely got Connell, Kilcar and Glensuilly.
Yeah.
And they're sitting on 0 points.
Absolutely.
I mean, the draw,
one.
depends. Look at the draw, it's a big
Look at
one.
the draw, the big influence.
All right, Four Masters against Killybegs. Four Masters started off with a great victory over Gweedore. They find themselves now in the qualifiers. Killybegs got a victory, 2 points, and looked to be favourites then against Glenfin, who had to go to Killybegs, but that backfired on them with Glenfin coming up with their first victory. So a hard one to read this. Maybe Four Masters favourites there.
I'm not so sure, Charlie. Again, we would have played both teams in the league this year. Four Masters got promoted, didn't they? They went up this year, didn't they? Four Masters did. Killybegs came up short. So for me, this game will hinge probably on Hugh McFadden. He's a big club player, and everybody knows that. And I think he's been really good in the championship since he returned. And even watching him with Donegal this year, he looks leaner and fitter than he's probably been in the last couple of seasons. Yeah. So he's a handful at club level. Now, do Four Masters have somebody to control him and look after him? If they do, then yeah, they're well on their way. Owen Band doesn't seem to be featuring for Killybegs. No. Like, the one thing about Four Masters, they're very much a unit in terms of how they play. They're young, they're fit, they're athletic. They've got a couple of top forwards. Senan Carr has scored 6 goals in this championship. He could light it up. I don't know. I really find it hard to call this game. I really do. It's a game in Ardra, isn't it?
It's in Ardra.
Yeah, and that's where Four Masters played there last weekend against Ardra. So that might work in their favour a wee bit. I expect it to be a tight, physical battle. And if it's that tight and Hugh McFadden's on the field, is he going to be the difference? For me, it could
Four
be.
Masters at that 7 points lead against Glenswilly early in the second half and looked to be on the way to victory. I know Michael Murphy had a huge influence in the game, but that would have knocked their confidence a bit, John.
Probably a bit, Charlie, because it was a big test for them. But Charlie, it's funny because they had a big test against Gweedore the first day and they won it. Now I know there was a turning point in that game, I think, where Darrell Boyle had a great chance to score a goal and he missed it, and I think Four Masters went up the field and maybe scored a goal, so it gave them that cushion. So that was a big result for Four Masters, Charlie. I seen them then the following week against Downings, and I was impressed with them, Charlie. It was the first time I've seen them in the flesh in a long time. As Danny says, young, athletic, full of running, well organised. Senan Carr scored 3 goals that night on fire. Didn't need much service. Anything he got, great eye for goal, Charlie. He wasn't a bit like the Venny, didn't want to tap it over the bar. If there's a man in front of him, he was going past him and putting it in the net. So it's good to see a forward like that coming on the scene, especially from Donegal's point of view. So then they got Terry started off well against Glenswilly, but once the pressure came on, I'd say that would have knocked their confidence a bit. But they have been playing in Division 2. They've got promoted. We know their underage success of the last few years, Terry. They won their first 2 championship games. All right, beat by Glenswilly. Went to Ardra. Thought they would have beat Ardra by more. It was a bit of a dogfight. Maybe Ardra were maybe trying to keep the score down, stay in the game, fair play them. They only got beat by 1. But I like the look of Four Masters, Charlie. I think, I know they are young and they're probably a wee bit inexperienced, but they're definitely a common team. And I think they would have nothing to fear against Killybegs. Absolutely.
As Danny said, Owen Band missing is a huge loss.
Owen Band's missing. I know Hugh will be a big player, but they've got a couple of big men there. Richard O'Rourke and is it Joe Leap, and is there two brothers?
Four Masters, they're strong that way.
And I think Four Masters, Charlie, would have nothing to fear in that Killybegs team.
I think the concern for Killybegs going into it is the home defeat to Glenfin.
Exactly. Their confidence is bound to be hit because they looked for sure as if they were going to finish on 4 points. The way things had gone with Glenfin beforehand. But fair play to Glenfin.
Fair play to Glenfin, surely, because I think most people would have thought they were in trouble going into that game. But listen, championship football, Charlie, just
it's a 50-50 game, Charlie. But if I was putting money, I would have no fear in Four Masters to knock them out.
Would you put money on St Eunice to beat Ardra then?
Well, I think I would, definitely. But the way St Eunice plays sometimes, Charlie, you wouldn't. Not that you wouldn't know, but there's no guarantee that you might say they'll go out and hammer Ardra, but. Sometimes our boys make it hard on themselves. They can win, but sometimes, and maybe Charlie, we expect too much of them because a lot of teams do set up defensively. But in fairness, they do set up defensively against St Eunice, so it makes it very hard for our boys. And it's a lot of the games. We have a lot of possession, and we might be ahead, and maybe we think we should be more ahead. But teams are sitting in. But there's no point Ardra sitting in this weekend. Well, maybe there is, Charlie, but. For Ardra to win the game, obviously they're going to have to score something now. So they're going to have to attack at stages and probably leave themselves open. And you think then with the quality St Eunice have up the field that they'll have enough quality. Listen, Charlie, St Eunice will win the game. I don't think that it'd be a massive shock now if that didn't happen. But I suppose from St Eunice's point of view, Charlie, they'll be looking to get a bit of form. They've stumbled. The Gweedore defeat after playing so well against Niamh Conall, Charlie, and everyone chatting about them, but that's a bit of a red herring. I think Niamh Conall probably were just happy enough, and if they won, they won. But if they're too experienced, Jerry, to get caught up and getting beat that early in the season, it was only a group game. So St Eunan's, were disappointing against Gweedore. Tough week for the club last week with the sad passing of Aidan McGlynn, but the boys went down to Downings, got the job done. So it's back on track now. They'll have to get their minds back for the championship and overcome Ardra on Saturday night.
Psychologically, are they in a place they'd rather not be in a preliminary quarter final?
St Eunan's? No, I think they're happy enough, Charlie.
Yeah,
that'd be my read. Looking at their team selections throughout the championship, they've been very smart in terms of rotating players. The Connell have done it as well, but they were kind of bringing players back in from injury. Barry has rested players at key times, and I think he'll be happy enough to have this game this weekend to get maybe his best 15 on the field. Now Niall O'Donnell hasn't featured the last two games.
No.
He would need minutes before a quarter final if they were to win the game. Look, I think they will win the game, but I think it's a tricky game for St Eunan's because everybody expects them to win and win easily.
Yeah.
Right. Ardra were in this situation last year against Cloughaneely. I know Cloughaneely are not St Eunan's, but they came out that day and they played really good football against Cloughaneely, and they went the following week down to Fulcara and put in a big performance against Gweedore, and they hit 3 goals, I think, on the night.
Yeah.
They've hit 4 goals already in this championship against, was it Airua?
Yeah.
If they scored 4-5 against Airua. So Ardra will set up defensively. They'll look to hit on the counter attack, and they look for the likes of KJ Malloy to do something big, and CJ Malloy is a big presence at full forward. So it's a game that St Eunan's can't take for granted, but it is a game that they probably will win, and probably will win handy enough. But Ardra will still tough it out as best they can. It's in McCool Park on Saturday night.
Yeah.
If it's wet and slippy and makes, if a team sets, an underdog gets a chance to set up defensively.
Yeah.
I listened to KJ Malloy or CJ Malloy today. He's not happy about the Joel Bradley-Watts situation, which he thinks has left them in the situation they're in terms of meeting St Eunan's rather than somebody else. So they'll have a bit of hurt. And going back to your time, John, St Eunan's Ardra was a big game.
Always.
Always,
and Ardra are a proud championship club, and they're not going to roll over just because they're underdogs against St Eunan's.
All right, quickly then, boys. Donnell Downings, John.
I'll go for Maxi to pull off a bit of an upset.
There you go.
I'll go with the neighbours.
All right. Ardra, St Eunan's.
St Eunan's.
St Eunan's.
For Masters, Killybegs.
I'm edging towards Killybegs.
I'll for Masters.
Gweedore, McCool's.
I'll go for McCool's, Charlie.
I'll go Gweedore.
Okay, I'm glad you're disagreeing. That's good to hear that. That's what we wanted.
Well, it just shows you how hard they are to call.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you're right, Danny. Yeah. Just very quickly on the relegation one then, Airua versus Cloughaneely in O'Donnell Park on Sunday. Cloughaneely have really struggled in this chat, although they've played, as you said, Danny,
they've played hard games, Charlie.
And I saw them in Glenswally, and they were close to Glenswally that day.
Look, the story of the two teams is very similar, and the two teams seem to be struggling a lot this year, right? But Cloughaneely's struggles are more to do with emigration and the absence of Jason McGee. There's nothing wrong with their spirit. There's nothing wrong with they're digging in. They survived in a penalty shootout to stay in Division 2.
That's right.
And they tried to tough it out against Glenswally and very close to it, and they've had tough games in the championship which will stand to them.
Yeah.
Airua, on the other hand, Charlie, seemed to be in free fall, and it's very hard to address something. They lost a manager during the league. The reserve team won the reserve championship last year.
That's
they
right.
didn't field last week, and they're not in the quarterfinals this year. There's something wrong there that the players have to address. Otherwise, they're going to slip back to intermediate football, which they were in
for 10 years.
Yeah. So, did that defeat in the quarterfinal last year to St Eunan's knock the stuffing out of the players, believing, look, we've given our best shot. We're not going to be good enough to compete against the best. And when John McNulty was in there playing defensive football, he was criticised by different people, even maybe within his own club. John has left the job, and it went maybe in a different direction in terms of style of play, and it hasn't worked for them. They're not competitive.
No.
There's something not right there, and of the two teams now, Cloughaneely's spirit and togetherness will count a lot in a relegation match, and it might be enough to take a flaky Airua.
Okay, John.
You'd have to, in fairness to Danny, he's made good points there. Cloughaneely are, they're fighting for everything, where Airua seems to, it's collapsed on them. So if Cloughaneely can get it together, Cherry, and raise a fight, will Airua have it? Because as Danny said, they're coming in from different perspectives. Cloughaneely have had a very difficult draw. Three, Glenties, Kilcar, Glenswally, very hard games for them. Where Airua had games that you think they could have won. Like Ardra bet them. Who else bet them, Danny? You have it here. Airua, they bet Downings, Donnell bet them, Ardra bet them, Niamh Collin bet them. So no, you would, if Cloughanedy can muster it up, Charlie. They could beat Airua, which would probably be a bit of an upset because, as you said, they held on to Division 2 status in the penalty shootout against Need Breed, where Airua stayed in Division 1.
No, relegated.
Oh, relegated.
Relegated in a playoff against Glenfin.
Glenfin.
Oh, sorry, against Termon.
Against Termon. Yes, over in Glenties. That's right.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
And that's what if Jason McGee's on the pitch, I think it's Cloughanedy all day, but he's not there, so it does even.
He won't be there either, Danny.
No, it doesn't sound
like it. Yeah.
Glenfin, big result for them in Killybegs, as we discussed earlier on. Confidence booster going into this game against St Knowles. Fancy Glenfin?
Yeah, because they'll come into it with a bit of confidence, and to be fair to Glenfin, Charlie, in the first couple of games in the Championship, they had an issue with scoring. They didn't score in the second half against Squidor. Now, that can happen down in Margathlon.
Yeah.
And they only scored 2 points in the second half against Donnell at home. That first defeat against Donnell was the big defeat because it's a home game against a team that is at your level you expect to win. They didn't get the result. Then they lost to Squidor. But that was a big result for them in Killybegs, and they nearly got out of the relegation based on that.
They did.
On the other side of it, then you have St Knowles, and I was speaking to Stephen Griffin during the season. We played them in Division 2, and they've just been decimated with injuries, Charlie. Really, really decimated.
And have picked up more now in the Championship as
himself,
well.
He got a rib injury last week, and the big difficulty they have is Brendan McCall is obviously a big miss, but Pather Morgan, if you look at the stats throughout the Championship, has scored very little for a player of his ability. But the problem he has is when you're playing for Donegal, you're not going to be man-marked because there's about 9 or 10 you have to man-mark. In club football, he's probably getting double-marked in these games. So he's got no space to play. And then with the injuries they have, they're just struggling at the minute to pull it together to get a result. So based on what happened over the last few weeks, I would fancy Glenfin to get over the line. But I would still fancy St Knowles to beat an Airua in a final.
Glenfin, a good Championship team, John. I mean, they're shocked to see them go out of this.
They always, they can always survive and they can always pull a result out or a performance out when you least expect it. So, as Danny said, he's got a better handle on St Knowles, Charlie, and injuries are decimating them for sure. Because, I remember saying in here, Cherry, maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago,
they played St Eunice in
quarterfinal and played very well and had a man sent off early in the first minute. Was it Stephen Griffin or Barry, or one of them got sent off in the first?
Stephen, I think,
from the throw up. So they battled hard at it. And I remember saying that they've gone further than any St Knowles team had ever gone to a quarterfinal. And now unfortunately, injuries, and I wouldn't think it's for the lack of trying, Charlie, or the lack of effort, but just when you're missing so many quality players. It's going to be difficult, especially Brendan McCall, Charlie. And maybe leads us on to what a lot of people are chatting about, Charlie, around the county, is the county men missing these games for their clubs. It's hard for the clubs. Owen Band's not playing much.
Jason McGee, Brendan McCall, there's 5 or 6 of them.
Michael Langan's going away now. So it's hard for clubs, Charlie, and it's when you're waiting for your county men to come back all year and they come back then and they're injured and they can't play. Listen, it's tough on inter-county players, Charlie. They have a big load. A lot of expected of them.
Maybe too big a load, John.
Yeah, a lot of expected of them, but it's hard for the clubs, Charlie. We're here as club men, and when you have your county men, you're looking forward to them, and St Michael's going so well and topping the table, and now Michael's missing for them. It must be hard for them, Charlie. But listen, I suppose. He was there and he played well for them, and he maybe got them that far and kept them out of relegation. Maybe who knows what the psyche is, but it's difficult for St Knowles too with no Brendan McCall for the Championship game. So Glenfin, Cherry, after getting the result against Killybegs, coming in with a wee bit of form, you'd think they could beat St Knowles.
All right, Danny, Airua, Cloughanedy, you think? Chance?
I'll go Cloughanedy.
Yeah, I'll go Cloughanedy too.
All right. Okay, you're listening to our podcast here in Donegal Daily. Donegal Sport Hub is brought to you in association with Donnell Construction in Boston, USA. Thanks to Paul Freed for his continued support. We're now moving on to the Intermediate Championship, and Danny has a big interest in this as manager, of course, of Niamh Wara, who are through to the quarterfinals and will play Milford on Saturday in Fulcara, and also on Saturday it'll be this tournament against Red Hughes. Danny, we'll start with you. I know it's awkward talking about Milford and Niamh Wara when you're managing one of them and managed one of them previously, so it's a very difficult one for you. Both teams would have ambitions to win this championship, obviously big ambitions, so this is a big draw in the quarterfinals for both of you.
Look, it is, Charlie, and I said this to you before the championship started, that no matter who you are in the Intermediate Championship, if you get to the quarterfinal, you'll feel you have a chance because it is so competitive and it is so tight, and the margins are so thin in some of the games. But look, I'm not trying to be smart about it, but most people coming into the championship wouldn't have had us as one of the favourites to win it. The 5 names people would have talked about would have been Milford, Termon, New Columba, Malin, Buncrana.
Yeah.
And then the likes of ourselves, Fanny Gales, Bundoran coming up in the next bracket, if you want to call it that. So, look, the last time Milford won the Intermediate Championship, they won it. You know, they're playing senior football since. We've been struggling.
Who was managing them then?
Well, I know, but that,
Sean Paul Bard.
but I mean, they have pedigree, Charlie. You know, they know how to win. They've won the championship before, and it's still, I mean, there's still top players there from that time. I was there, like Cathal McGettigan, Dara Black, Ken Barrett, young Rory Donnell when he came into it. When I finished up, Conor Call, Finn Call was too young, Shane Black was too young, Kyle Black's still there. So look, they have a lot of quality, and we're not naive. But and the other part side of it as well is last year they were playing senior football. We were playing in a relegation game, so we know where we're at. We've made progress. We feel we're in a good place going to the quarter-final. We don't feel there's any pressure on us. I'm not trying to heap pressure onto other teams.
Your two defeats have been very narrow defeats, Danny, and
well, the first defeat, Charlie, was deserved. You know, Narossa beat us fair and square up there in that local derby. We didn't take the chances we created. They did, and they toughed it out, and credit to them. The game at the weekend against Buncrana, we were very unlucky to lose that. Buncrana admitted that themselves. They were going for a point to equalise in the last minute, and it ended up in the back of the net. We lose by a point. Yeah. But both teams are already through, so everything wasn't on the line. But look, we'll go to Fulcar on Saturday evening. Now we're going to be short one or two lads. Joey Gillespie picked up a bad MCL injury after a minute against Buncrana. We have Harry Haran didn't feature against Buncrana. Daniel Ward's not available this weekend, so we're light on numbers. But look, Milford.
You have good memories of Fulcar from the GAA Championship.
Yeah, and we actually played Milford in the semi-final and beat them. So now they beat us in the league down in the Banks. So look, I had a huge respect for the Milford team and the club and everything else, and I'm looking forward to the game on one level, but it's an awkward game at the same time. But look, I'm on the Murray man, so I'm going to be doing everything I can to get the result.
You can be sure, Charlie, down in whoever's doing the MC down in Fulcar, say 3 late changes on the leave warrant team, and the three boys that he's after naming miraculously take to the pitch.
Unfortunately not. But look, on a serious note, like Milford are to be one of the teams that I think should be fancied to win it. And I said that at the outset when I was chatting to you about it. Yeah. They do have quality players. Rory O'Donnell, coming from the county setup, was a good player around the middle of the field. Conor Call, Finn Call, Dara Black. You name a lot of them, Charlie. Yeah. Look, they'll go into the game as favourites. No point saying anything else. But look, we'll be there and we'll give it a shot.
Yeah. Fancy Milford, John?
You probably would, Charlie. You probably would, just from being that senior team and having that experience this last few years, you know. But when you go down, Charlie, we've said it this last few years, intermediate is a dogfight. So, you know, it really levels itself out. Even if you have come down from senior, there's no guarantee. Far from it, we've seen it this last few years that the team that has come down has found it very hard to go back up straight away.
Well, Danny mentioned how competitive it is, John. Just go back to the last weekend. We talked about this before we started recording here. 6 matches, 1 draw, 3 matches won by 1 point, 1 match won by 2 points, and the last game won by 4 points. Yeah. A lot of stake in those final 6 games, which just shows you the closeness of all the teams against. That's teams battling for relegation as well.
Absolutely, they're all in the mix, Charlie, and everything to play for, which we've always said about the Donegal Intermediate Championship. So it's there for anyone, Charlie, but probably with Milford, with that wee bit more experience playing at a higher level, you would think that they might have a bit too much for Danny's boys on Saturday, but it won't be easy. But, you know, do they have, you know, with Cian Baird up front and Dara Black, you might have a wee bit more scoring power.
Yeah. Cathal McGettigan,
you know, so it'll maybe favour James McGinley's men, you know, Milford, Charlie. But you wouldn't be surprised if Danny, the Guardiola that he is, pulls a stroke and gets a famous win for.
We'll talk about it next week.
Right,
Neath Columba against Bundoran. I saw Neath Columba against Termon on the opening day. Danny, they conceded 2 goals inside the first 3 minutes, lost that game by 10 points. But I, in fairness to them, and I said it on the report that day, their heads never went down. You know, there were 6 or 7 points down after 3 minutes. They were beaten by 10 points, but you never felt they were really that much out of the game. I think they scored 14 points that day as well. But they flattered to deceive at times because they've had a couple of very narrow victories over teams you'd expect they would beat very easily. That's typical of Neath Columba, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I haven't seen Neath Columba this year. We just haven't had a chance because we're kind of 2 different ends of the draw in the championship. But the one thing on Neath Columba player won't do is let his head go down. No. You know, they're going to battle, and you know they've Brendan Doherty in there as manager this year, who's a Glen man. He's going to drive it hard. Yeah, look, last year, was it 2 years ago they made the final? Last year they came up short in the quarter-final against Termon. They've got Bundoran now down in Ballantrae on Sunday afternoon. That's a game they have to fancy, Charlie. If they're serious about the winning anything, they have to take Bundoran out on Sunday afternoon. Now, Bundoran, it won't be easy. Jamie Brennan, Paul Brennan. I see the two McAniffs, Michael and Keane, are back playing. So, and they've Anton Govorov and Timmy Govorov. They're good
quality players.
And if Bundoran, we've always said this in here, Bundoran, if they get their act together, are well capable of winning the Intermediate Championship. But it's getting their act together is the key. Now, they're in the quarter-final, so they'll certainly not fear New Columba. But I would think, based on what we've seen, and New Columba probably played, I know they lost narrowly or lost that first day to Termon, but they had a win against Malin, which was significant enough on a windy day down. I know they're at home, but at half time they were, I think, 8 or 9 points up, but Malin brought back to 2. But New Columba, against the breeze, were able to get up the field and get a couple of scores to win it. And then they had to go to Burt at the weekend, and we know what Burt are like in terms of trying to break them down. Struggled to win it, but still won it, Charlie. Many's a team could go to Burt the way they play and the way they're set up and not get the result. And Glen or New Columba were more or less guaranteed a place in the quarter-final anyway. So to go there and get the result was significant. So that'll stand to them. I fancy them. I think they'll take Bundoran. I think they'll be in the semi-final.
John?
Well, I'll chat more about Bundoran, Charlie, because I know more about them just from seeing them. We played them this year in the league in O'Donnell Park. Now, as I said at the start of the programme, league football in Donegal is a joke, really, and that Bundoran performance that day was a joke, Charlie, and I think they would admit that themselves. I think we might have bet them. We had it, Danny?
No.
We might have bet them by 20 points, Charlie, and the boys playing. I don't think I've played senior football in a long time. But, in saying that, Bundoran are a funny crowd. When they get their act together, they can do it. And it's funny, Charlie, that, the Relic, they put... they hadn't won a game all year, and when they played Ballyshannon, they came out with this performance and bet Ballyshannon. Now, I know Ballyshannon weren't going well, but that put Ballyshannon into the relegation mix and got Ballyshannon relegated. And
they got 5 points out of 8 in the league thing as well.
So that's what I mean, Charlie. So they were playing Division 1 now. They weren't great in Division 1, but when they get their act together and kind of put a show on, they've got quality, Charlie. As Danny said, Timmy Govorov, the brother, Jamie Brennan. So they've got scores up front. Two McAniffs are back playing. It's just whether they have enough quality, coming off the bench, Charlie. They're probably struggling for numbers. Oshin Walsh is back playing at full back. So is Paul Brennan playing?
He came on and won the game. Just on that game and other games, we referenced county players a few times here. This is the first year that I felt county players were going to come into games the way it was back in the 90s and all that, whether you could see a county player because of his fitness levels or because of his conditioning. Like, these boys are coming back from a year with Jim where you can see that under Jim they're at a different level to previous years. So the two big players on the pitch at the weekend in that game will be Jamie Brennan and Aaron Doherty. Which one of those two is going to get the better of their man marker? Because both will be man marked by the opposition. Philip Doherty probably pick up Jamie.
Was up in the county too. So
but Aaron Doherty doesn't always kind of deliver scores. He'll probably, if New Columba are to get over the line, he'll probably have to have a big game. Philip Doherty does drive hard from full back and he kicks scores for them. And they do have a couple of lads back. Lanty Malloy, I think Gillespie's back there as well. So they do have forwards, and they might have more forwards than Bundoran.
But Bundoran went to Malin last week and got a draw.
And that shouldn't be sniffed at.
That shouldn't be sniffed at. So it's hard to know, Charlie. It'll not be.
No, listen, it's going to be tight.
It'll be tight. So it could be a toss of a coin.
Tight one down in Carndonagh as well, Buncrana against Malin. You'd have to make Buncrana favourites based on the league table if you look at it, but Malin lost a couple of games, very tight matches. They only got 3 points out of 8, Danny, which was a surprise. But they'll make it tight. The big derby, that one.
It's a huge game down in Sean, Charlie. It's going to be, there's going to be skin and hair flying in that game if the two teams go at it, and I think they will. I think the fear, whatever team loses this game, is not just a defeat that knocks them out of the championship, it's a defeat by your nearest neighbour. More or less, they're big clubs down in the Sean. Malin got to the final last year, came up short against Downings. Buncrana have come up short in the last 4 quarter-finals. And they've brought Eamon McGee in this year to help Gary Duffy, and we played them at the weekend, and I was impressed enough with them. But they've lost Keelan McGonigal, which is massive, and they've lost Sean McLaughlin to a cruciate down in our league game early in the year. So that's 2 big losses. But young lads have stepped up. Aaron Cleary's there, Oshin Crawford's there, young Dylan Mulholland's there, Andrew Davison, good young players, and still being driven by Peter McLaughlin in the middle of the field, good player, William McLaughlin, Sean Doherty at full back. They have a lot about them, a lot to like about them. But they come up against a Malin team. Like Malin last year, Charlie, and they give out to me all the time at school, but every time I speak about them, but I'm just being honest when I do speak about them. Last year they were on a crest of a wave. They got that Division 2 final and were knocked out by a last minute goal by Downings, but they built momentum through the championship, and they're one of the best, if not probably one of the best supported per capita teams in the county.
That's
When they
right,
get on a
yeah.
roll, they get everybody
Everyone
behind them,
comes out,
and they're going to have huge support up in Carndonagh at the weekend. I think they'll have far more support than Mucrana will have, and that is a big help to them in tight games. Now, I've seen Matthew Byrne's return to the fold and Sean Kelly's return to the fold. I'm guessing that they held them boys back for championship because they do have miles in the legs. So what they'll bring in terms of experience and craft, they won't bring legs. So that might be a wee problem for them. They'll need big performances from Christy Fildara. I saw Benny Fildara didn't start at the weekend. Josh Conlon's going to have a big game. Conor O'Neill. Malin have plenty of good players as well. Look, this. I find it hard to call this game, Charlie. Just being honest, I think it's going to be so tight. They drew last year in the championship in Buncrana in the first game of last year's championship. But I think whoever loses this game is just going to be devastated because Buncrana 5 quarterfinals in a row, possibly.
Yeah.
That's hard to take.
That's disappointing. Like,
And
when that
Malin,
happens.
and Malin trying to get back. I was there with Milford in 16 and 17. Milford lost the 16 final, got back there in 17 and won it. You don't talk about getting back, but it's in your psyche, it's in the player's psyche all the time.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to perform all the time to get back to where you want to get to. And if Malin are thinking of the final rather than Buncrana, they have to focus on Buncrana and nothing else.
Oh, absolutely. You fancy them, John?
I do, Charlie. Well, I've always this thing on the back of my mind about Malin. Like, they knocked us out of the championship in 2013 when we were county champions down at Buncrana that night and fully deserved it. So, to me, they always have a wee bit of pedigree in the championship. I know they're intermediate now, but they were senior for a long time. And battled hard, Charlie, and give everyone plenty of it, especially down in Connolly Park. And, as Danny says, great supporters and always come with a big crowd if they come to Donnell Park for a game. So, I would think the pressure's on Buncrana with, Eamon McGee in making a statement that they're looking to push on. And fair play them, you got to admire their ambition and looking to push on. But not having got to a semi-final in the last 4, it's not good at intermediate level for a club like Buncrana. Now, they've got promoted to Division 1 this year, which would be a big help to them to try and hold on to young players and build them into a senior team. Keelan McGonigal, a massive loss, Jerry, but I would not back against Malin. Like, it's nearly a home game for Malin and Carndonagh in the road. And you said that, a big crowd. And, surely when they're playing Buncrana, they won't be looking beyond that because it's a big game for them, and that'll sharpen the concentration for this weekend. And they'll be, as you say,
the only thing that would concern me on Malin, I said this last year as well, to me they don't score enough. I looked through their stats in the league. They average 10 points a game.
Not enough.
In the championship, it's up around 11 points a game. So
not enough, Danny.
Well, they play defensively, Charlie, and then as a point I made about Sean Kelly and the likes of Matthew Byrne, they're not going to get you up the field in terms of running power, but they'll be good defensively and they'll be good on the ball. Have they enough men to get up the pitch and hurt teams in the counter attack? That's the key. If you're going to play defensive, you have to get bodies up the field and you have to get on the end of moves. Are they doing that often enough, and have they enough players to do that? On paper, they do, but they're going to have to step up and do it. Because under Eamon, Buncrana will be set up defensively. Gary Duffy will have them well set up. And it's going to be a case of, can you outscore us? Because Buncrana will fancy their chances of getting more than 10 points.
Right. Well, but Malin stayed up in Division 1.
Yeah. They won four of the first 5.
Yeah, I suppose when other teams they do that, and they drew with St. Julian's and O'Donnell Park.
Oh, you have to admire that, Charlie.
And they got goals that day, so
they can play on the big day.
Yeah.
Termon, the only team to go through unbeaten, 8 points, taking on Red Hughes, who they played last week up in Killygarden, and it was 6-5, I think.
It was 3-1 at half time, was it?
3-1 at half, something like that. 6-5, but they won anyway. And they won a tight game earlier as well against somebody, didn't they? Burt.
By a point as well.
A couple of points near the end. Termon favourites, but obviously Red Hughes, I was saying to you earlier, Danny, Red Hughes' one victory was over Burt. They beat them by 10 points to 5. If that result had been reversed the other way round, Burt would be playing in the quarterfinals instead of being at the bottom with no points, and Red Hughes would be in the relegation playoff. But that's neither here nor there. Termon favours now. The game's in Donald Park, plenty of room, good forwards, and a pitch that a lot of them are familiar with.
Oh yeah, listen, look, Termon are favourites. There's no point saying otherwise. But do you remember they played them in the quarterfinal in the Park? Was it 2 seasons ago? And they went in as strong favourites, and they got over the line by a point.
Yeah, that's right.
Red Hughes are going to set up the way they set up. They're going to set up defensively, which they did at the weekend, and it's going to be up to Termon to break that down. Now, do Red Hughes have 2-man markers for Darren McDade and Enda McCormick? Because they're the 2 men that need to be stopped. Bobby McGettigan can drift in and maybe catch a high ball under the crossbar or fist one to the net. Do Red Hughes then have enough scoring power? Jack Gillespie's not about anymore, and he's a big player for them. But they have a couple of young lads there. I can't remember the lad's name at half back or half forward, a dangerous player. he's dangerous for them.
Well, if you don't know him,
Stephen-
Danny, I certainly don't know
Well,
him.
I know you probably don't know. Stephen McMenamin's obviously going to be there driving them.
Yeah.
Look, and there's no love lost, Charlie, between these two.
No.
If you remember back to the situation in the Bourne Road, was it 2 years ago, where there was a bit
Well,
of
I
a
think
schmozzle?
there's history going back to maybe
Further,
1990, Cherry, or 1991. You remember that game over in McCool Park where there was
I
a
do.
serious incident?
Yeah,
So
I
it was
do.
1991 Senior
Long way
Championship.
back.
So I don't know if it goes back to that, but definitely a bit of
Oh, there is.
history
And
between Termon and Red Hughes.
I'll just
through
make a
the
point
years.
about Termon, Danny. They beat Neve Columba by 10 points the
Yeah.
first day with those early goals, right? Their scoring difference at the end of the campaign was plus 14. So they only won the other 3 games by 2 points, 1 point, and 1 point.
yeah.
So has their performance level dropped after getting over the line against Neve Columba, or are other teams just?
I don't know. I
setting
think
up against them?
it's a bit like the St Union situation. They're playing
Teams,
against teams that
they're
are setting
setting
up ultra defensively.
Yeah.
Burt
They're afraid of them,
and Red Hughes.
Yeah.
So
And that's difficult for Termon, Charlie, because you know they're a good team, and as you say, good forwards, and they went out the first day and got the goals against Neve Columba, and then everyone else sees that and they think we don't have, we have,
Yeah.
if we're going to beat them, we're going to
But
have
they've
to.
got to find a way, John.
Well, that's
They've
that,
got to
that,
find
that,
a way.
they have to find a way.
they found a way. That's the
Yeah.
point. You know, they found a way to beat Burt
Yeah.
that day. They found a way to beat Red Hughes at the weekend.
Yeah.
So I
But
would
the-
say
but the-
Jaffa would be happy enough once
Yeah.
they're winning.
Once they win it, but the
Happy
pressure's
enough.
going to come on, Charlie, if Red Hughes can get ahead of them and maybe make it a real dogfight. But then, Charlie, the other thing we have to say is like if Termon get ahead of Red Hughes, maybe go 4 points up at half time or something,
Yeah.
do these other teams have a plan B? Like, can they come out and try and have a go then to try and stay in the
Yeah.
championship and win the game, or do they all stay back? And you're
Well, there's
wondering
no point in
what
staying
are they
back,
trying
is
to
there?
do? Like,
Exactly.
but we've seen teams doing it, Charlie.
Yeah. Right. Termon, Red Hughes, and John.
Oh, Termon, Charlie, heap the pressure on
Danny,
them.
Danny, keep the pressure.
I'll
on.
go Termon as well.
Termon, Milford, Neve Wora.
Milford.
Milford.
Neve Columba, Bundoran.
I'm going for Bundoran.
Good man, John.
I'll go Neve Columba.
Columba. And Buncrana, Malin, now.
Malin.
Draw.
Oh, Danny.
Penalties.
Sitting on the bench here.
No,
Who's who?
I'll be honest. I think I'll go Buncrana slightly.
Right. Right, we're running out of time, lads. Just very quickly, the relegation playoffs. Narossa against Letterkenny Gales, who a lot of people were surprised that went to Fanet, won last week, Danny. Can they beat Narossa?
Based on that, yeah, they can. But I fancy Narossa. I just think we played them the first. We played both teams in the championship, and Narossa beat us the first day. Narossa, people think Narossa maybe have some old players through them. Aidan Hanlon's still a fine footballer. He scored a goal against us that not many men would score. Let's be honest with you. And they have a couple of lads, Johnny Boner in through them, and Big Malloy in the middle of the field. But on top of that, they've good young players around that. So I think Narossa, I think they'll Oisin Caulfield driving them. I think they'll have somebody to pick up Ronan Frayne. I think Narossa will beat the
The
Gales.
Gales will be on a high, John, after going to Fanet and won last week.
Well, they will.
You know,
and I suppose Ronan Frayne's the key man. He's back. Charlie
back.
didn't play before this, so when he was back, they won. So that's
give them a chance then.
That's no. Well, you give them a chance. I like they've had a poor season, but
But I wonder was the performance of Fanet on the back of the upheaval with losing the manager.
Possibly.
You know, can they do that 2 weeks in a row?
Yeah. Burt against Gael Fanet. Fanet coming out of that game, Danny, disappointing last week.
This is a bad draw for Fanet Gales.
For Fanet Gales.
You know, Fanet Gales, Charlie, let's be honest.
Burt haven't won a game, but their score difference was -10.
Yeah.
Well, they make it hard, Charlie. That's the way they play. They sit down and make it
Fanet
hard.
went into last weekend planning for the quarter-final. I don't care what anybody says. You're playing Letterkenny Gales at home, who've lost their manager, who we
Lost
beat the
all their
previous
games.
week by 17 or 18 points. You're thinking, we're okay, we'll be in the quarter-final. We'll get over the line against the Gales. Now they find themselves in a nightmare semi-final against Burt. Ronan McLaughlin back in charge. They will set up with 15 behind the ball, and they will meet you with everything they have once you cross halfway. So you better be ready for
We
that.
could see another low score.
Guaranteed.
Yeah, it'll be low scoring, and it's up to Fanet to break it down. And Burt will hit you on the counter attack. And Burt have good players, Charlie. And I'll tell you, it'll be hard to
Right,
beat.
call it then, Danny.
Burt.
Fanet. Just to
Narossa,
disagree with Danny.
Narossa, Gales.
I'll go for Narossa too.
Okay. Junior A Championships, the 2 quarter-finals on at the weekend as well, both on Saturday. Neve Podrick Muff taking on Neve Breed, and St Mary's Convoy taking on Urus, and the first named teams there have home advantage in those quarter-finals. Karen Dunna and Neve Ulton are awaiting them in the semi-finals. We'll talk more about that next week when the semi-final lineup is decided, lads.
Well, the only
That's
thing,
it.
Charlie, on that junior championship, like we were chatting about it before, sorry to interrupt
go
you
on
so
ahead.
rudely,
No,
is
you're
that,
all
you
right.
know, we said the Convoy have two teams
two
didn't
didn't
field
play.
against
Yeah,
Convoy.
very
Like, and
disappointing.
if you look at the junior championship, Pettigo didn't field in a game, Lifford didn't field in a game, and Robert Emmis didn't field in a game. Very disappointing, Jerry, for Junior A Championship that teams are not feeding. Now, I had to go with Robert Emmons a couple of years ago, and I got a bit of stick about it from a Castlefin man. You know, when I criticised him for being in Junior B, a club that had a long history with Sandy Harper, and remember going over to the tournaments and all over there, a proud club. But in fairness, they got a result at the weekend. They bet Newton.
Was it? I don't know. First one in 11 years.
So fair play them. Credit for credit's due to Robert Emmons. Fair play them getting their act together. But Cherry, disappointing that 3 teams didn't feed in the Junior A Championship. And my point is that St Junans and Eve Connell were in it last year, the last 2 years, and it was a far better championship. But the junior clubs, in their wisdom, thought
better without them,
and it's collapsed. And it's not good for Donegal football. It's not good for the junior A Championship.
That shouldn't be happening in Junior A, Danny, should it?
No, it shouldn't, Charlie. But look, this goes back to the question you asked at the start about format. I think we should move away from formats and talk about the big elephant in the room is reserve football and what we're doing in this county with that. It doesn't serve a purpose anymore. Now, I disagree with something John said earlier, that league football is a joke. It's not. It might be to the bigger clubs because they have bigger fish to fry. But see, for the majority of clubs in the county, league football is really, really important. And I think we need to create, and I agree with Gary McDade said the same thing a couple of weeks ago, we need to create a Division 4, 5 and 6, but your reserve teams from Division 1 and Division 4 as their own separate identity. And if you're good enough to get out and compete in Division 3, away you go. Same with Division 2 teams in Division 5 and Division 3 teams in Division 6. And if clubs can't field or don't want to field reserve teams or teams in that division, then that's on the clubs. If you can't get men out to play, that's on you as a club.
Well, we need to address that. I'm banging that drum a long time, Cherry.
Reserve football's dead, John.
Before Gary McDade. Absolutely. It has been. Like St Junans 2 or 3 years ago, Cherry, in the senior championship and senior reserve, Bundoran didn't feed and St Knowles didn't feed in our first 2 games. And we're trying to tell our second players who are trying to get onto a senior team, and not being arrogant here, but we have a good senior team, so boys trying to get onto that have to be at a good standard to get onto the St Junans panel senior team. They're pushing hard, Cherry. Young players coming through, winning minor championships, and their championship 2 teams don't feed. And you're saying, boys, this is your big championship. And
you're not going to hold it.
Right, I'm going to leave it at that because I'm glad we had a disagreement at the end up there. I was very worried about disagreement far too much. That's it from Danny O'Donnell, John Haran and myself, Charlie Collins, on the Donegal Daily, Donegal Sport Hub podcast in association with Donegal Construction in Boston, USA. Thanks again to Paul Freed. We'll be back to do it all again next week when, of course, we'll know the quarter-final lineup for the Senior Championship and the semi-final lineup for both the Intermediate and the Junior A as well. Thanks for joining us.
The Donegal Sport Hub Donegal Daily Championship podcast.